Many of Donald Trump's most ardent supporters have been calling on Trump supporters not to vote Republican in the Georgia runoff. And I've warned, you've got this big protest happening on January 6th. And if people in Georgia who support the president decide to leave on the 5th to go to D.C. to support the president, they likely will not be around to vote on the 5th. So there's a possibility many Trump supporters, many Trump voters aren't there to vote in the Georgia runoff elections, and thus Democrats will take the narrow, the tiny Senate majority with a 50-50 split, and Kamala Harris breaks the tie. Democrats take control of everything, pack the courts, boom. Democrat supermajority across the board, all three branches of government. It's entirely possible. And because Trump isn't on the ticket, I fear people aren't going to go out and vote because, as I've mentioned time and time again, in 2018, many Democrats were able to take back congressional districts that Trump won because Trump wasn't on the ticket and Trump supporters didn't show up. The Trump supporter base is not the GOP. And we see this in Fox News's ratings, which are now in the gutter, and Tucker Carlson is losing to Rachel Maddow. Ever since Fox News didn't go to bat for Trump to win this election, Trump supporters have flocked to the likes of Newsmax, which they're not kind of upset with, but now they're going to One American News. Fox is now losing massive numbers in their ratings. But despite all of this, despite the power of the Trump supporter base, the Republicans are still set to actually win in Georgia, surprisingly. The polls show a narrow lead for at least one of the Republicans. There's two seats. So you've got one race where a Democrat's a little bit above, one where a Republican's a little bit above. It doesn't quite make sense because it's basically one election on January 5th, but I think we're seeing a couple things. The polls show Republicans are in the lead, and the polls were historically wrong last time, underestimating Republicans by 4 to 7 points nationwide. Yeah, that's insane. Those are historically bad margins for the pollsters. If that's anything to go off of, Republicans are going to win in Georgia. And I think something else needs to be said. Trump supporters may not be happy with Mitch McConnell. And I've said I don't think they're going to show up to support him as party leader in the Senate. But I do think Trump supporters are being led by a cause, the Constitution. And they do recognize that having the Republicans have some control is better than nothing. And thus, they're likely to actually turn out and vote for Republicans. My bigger question is, if many Republicans are polled and they say they will be voting Republican, what happens if many of them go and leave on January 5th, early morning, to make it to D.C. on the 6th? Look, if you're going to be at that big Trump rally, that big Trump protest, the day the electoral vote is being counted, and you're not going to be in Georgia. Now, I don't know how many people are planning on showing up in D.C., but I imagine a lot of people might just be like, pack your car, we're supporting Trump, not the Republicans. Mitch McConnell and several other Republicans have absolutely turned their back on Trump. They used him, got what they wanted, and now that it looks like Trump is on the way out, they're like, bye-bye, we got nothing for you. Trump supporters make up the 90+% of the Republican Party. But I think you've got a lot of Republicans who are just saying, we get it, we don't like them, but it's better than the Democrats. But we'll see. Frank Luntz, the famous pollster, says what Trump is doing, calling for this rally, this massive protest in D.C., challenging the results of the election could cost the Republicans their Senate majority come January 5th. There's a lot at play right now. Certainly, there are a lot of Trump supporters, in my opinion, believe a lot of crazy things, and I just don't get it, man. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I live in the crazy reality world, but I tell you this, I read left and right-wing sources, and there are a lot of Trump supporters that are just like, look, we recognize there are a lot of problems with this election, but Trump just is not winning this fight. But then you've got people like Lynn Wood who are saying just, some pretty crazy stuff. And you're hearing, staunch supporters start saying some pretty crazy stuff. So we got to look into this because this is where things get spicy. Trying to figure out what's going on. You've got the mainstream media on the left saying it's over, Trump's done, nothing's going to happen. And I'm like, my friends, we are far from normal right now. I have no idea what's going on, because in terms of like making a prediction, how can anyone make an accurate prediction when we have not been in normal for 4 years or longer? I mean, endless investigations, fake impeachments, then you get this pandemic. We've not been in normal for some time. So how do you even know what is supposed to be normal? For all I know, the aliens are real, Trump is right, and come January 6th, the election is overturned, whatever. I don't think so. But it's hard to predict. It really, really is. So I'll just tell you what's going on and what the official mainstream media is saying, why the GOP is likely to win. And then we'll talk about Trump supporters. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box. You want to send me some stuff. Some big news. We're about to launch an official proprietary website for my show and the Timcast IRL podcast. We're going to have an awesome members only section with exclusive content from our guests and other segments too. So it's coming soon. Stay tuned for that. It will be at timcast.com. And don't forget, share this video if you really do like my work. It's the most powerful thing. If everybody who watched this video hit that share button, post it on Facebook, then I would be beating CNN in the ratings. And I think as much as you might be critical of me, I know there's a lot of people who don't like me who watch, I'm better than CNN, okay? No, I'm sorry. I'm taking that. I'm definitely better than CNN. Well, in a lot of ways. I'm certainly not perfect, and they get some things right, and I use them as a source, but let's be real here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's read the first. The mainstream media, Frank Luntz, what's he saying? President Trump is jeopardizing the Republican Party's chances of keeping both Senate seats from Georgia by trying to overturn the election results, a top GOP-aligned pollster claims. Frank Luntz said that it's possible incumbent Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue could lose their January 5th runoff elections because Trump's calling into question the integrity of the vote could depress GOP turnout. I agree. I absolutely agree. And I've said that before. But looking at the polls, I think based on the historic failure rate, looks like it's going to be a landslide for Republicans. Looks like. Okay, I'm not saying it is. I already know the left is going to pull that clip out of context when the Republicans lose and be like, ah. Look, I've been the one saying that I think the Democrats are going to win. I do. But looking at the polls, I think the math, or at least the mainstream narrative, is a Republican victory. But let's read more. They say, Loeffler and Perdue are running against Democratic challengers Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, respectively. The two races are critical to the Republicans keeping their Senate majority. If they both lose, Democrats would have 50 Senate seats with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris serving as a tie-breaking vote. Georgia's two runoff races kicked off in November after Perdue and Loeffler failed to get more than 50% of the vote on Election Day. Early voting has already started for the January 5th election. It's possible, I mentioned earlier, many Trump supporters may just pack up and leave on the 5th, head to D.C. Many of these people may have voted early, but I'll tell you this. There was a breakdown of like what the vote would look like, the presidential vote, if only certain demographics voted. One of them was early vote. And if you only count the early vote, it was like 90% Democrat. In-person voting on Election Day was like 90% Republican. Now that's interesting. Republicans vote in person. I think what Trump is doing may actually cost the Republicans the election. I think it's fair, what Frank Luntz is saying, but I think he's missing the bigger point in that a lot of people from Georgia, not too far away from D.C. I imagine it's probably only, half a day's drive, if that, stopping for food and whatnot, and you make it to D.C. That means people aren't going to be there in person. They go on to say, Trump on Sunday tweeted that he plans to travel to Georgia to appear in an election rally on behalf of the two GOP incumbents. On behalf of the two great senators, I will be going to Georgia on Monday night, January 4th, to have a big and wonderful rally. So important for our country that they win. According to Luntz, however, it could be too little too late, given the president's public campaign that has sowed doubts about the integrity of the vote in the minds of tens of millions of his supporters nationwide. I'm afraid, and I believe, that those two Republicans may well lose on the 5th of January because of what the president is doing right now, Luntz told host Howard Kurtz of the Fox News program Media Buzz on Sunday. The media is helping him, and this should not be happening. That election should be waged separately from the ugliness that's happening here in Washington. Since losing the election to Joe Biden, Trump has been saying widespread fraud, et cetera, et cetera. And the big concern now is that we've already seen people asking, like Ronna McDaniel, of the GOP, why should I vote if it's rigged? And they're hard pressed to give a good answer. And that's the truth. They say, well, we need everyone to turn out. I'm sorry, man. If you're going to go around saying the system is broken, the system is rigged. If Trump is going to go after Brian Kemp and say something's up here and Trump supporters don't believe in it, why would they go vote? Now, this is the fun part. You see, everything I'm saying is showing that there is a split here. I'm not giving you a definitive answer. I want you to come up, with your own opinion on everything I'm saying. The polls show, if we combine the failures of the pollsters, which underestimated Republican turnout, with the current numbers, it looks like Republicans are going to win. But there's still a good reason to believe that these people aren't going to come out and vote at all. So I don't know how it turns out, but trust me, you're going to get whatever faction taking whichever statement to make the claim that I was wrong in my prediction. Here's the point. 538 says Georgia's regular Senate election. We show Republican Senator David Perdue is running for re-election against Democrat John Ossoff in a regularly scheduled election. So this is, I guess, these polls, regularly scheduled? It's a runoff, so I don't know what they're trying to say. We can see here for right now, as of December 28th, Perdue is up by 0.1, okay? And Warnock is beating Loeffler by just about 1%. But we saw a 4% failure from these pollsters, 4 to 7, depending on what state it was. So if I was going to make that bet, I'd bet on the Republicans. However, imagine this. You poll people. You get some, 60-year-old woman on the phone and you say, who will you be supporting in this election if you had to choose between, Warnock or Loeffler? And the woman says, oh, Loeffler without a doubt. And they say, okay, Warnock is up by 1 point. We then say these polls were historically wrong, because the polls were underestimating Republican turnout. And then we can say add 4 points to Loeffler and she wins, right? Well, hold on. What happens if they ask these people in this poll and they say, yes, I'll support the Republican, but I'm going to D.C. on the 6th, or I don't trust the election system, or I think it's rigged, and they don't go and vote. This is one of the biggest problems with Trump's push about the fraud and many others for the Republicans. Now, I'll tell you this. I don't care for the Republicans for the most part. And I'll tell you why. I've been saying this for, quite a bit over the past week or so. What are the Republicans doing? The house is on fire and they come with a bucket of water and they splash it and they go, well, we tried, but they don't do anything. What Trump supporters are asking for is definitive, right? The easiest way to put it is Democrats lock down their states. So you have the left saying, shut it all down. And then you have progressives saying, give everybody checks. The right is saying, open it all back up, protect the vulnerable, wear masks, social distances. Within varying degrees, there's arguments. Some people on the right obviously don't want to wear masks. But the general idea is take the general precautions, but bring back the industries so that the economy doesn't collapse and people have food and access and supplies and can feed their kids. What do the Republicans advocate for? No, serious question. The Democrats have locked things down. The Democrats in Congress and, are bickering amongst themselves about getting people more money. On the right, the Trump supporters and conservatives are saying open up the economy and they're protesting for it. But the Republicans are not aligned with their voter base. Now, I'm not going to pretend the Democrats are, but at least the Democrats relying on low information voters have a bunch of people shrugging and saying, OK, I guess. On the right, you have people saying we can't do this anymore. And the Republicans say, don't worry. Here's our plan. We'll go to Congress. We won't argue on behalf of reopening economies, and we'll offer up a small bucket of water for the American people while everything burns down. It makes no sense. Sorry. The Republicans aren't advocating for you. They're not advocating for Republicans. They're certainly not advocating for me. They're not advocating for anybody as far as I can tell. Trump is. Now, Trump is far from perfect, but Trump is a populist. So Trump says, give everybody $2,000 and the left laughs like, Trump is demanding more money. The Republicans aren't giving it up. Yes, that's normal. The Republicans were beholden to Trump for a long time. Now that they see their chance to get rid of him, Mitch McConnell's going around saying, don't object. Nobody support the president. Get him out and don't give anybody anything. I'd be saying something different if Mitch McConnell was like, we need the economy to reopen and we need to make sure people have the ability to work in this country and we protect the elderly. He's not doing that. They're not arguing that. They're not proposing that. He's just saying, I'll do nothing. I'll block everything. Let it burn. And no, Trump, you lose. Who is he actually representing? And I'll tell you this. Who is Nancy Pelosi representing? For that matter, you've got many progressives, not all the progressives on the Democrat side, who aren't actually representing anyone either. AOC seems to be just this prominent clapback politician who says things that people want to hear for the next generation, but does nothing. That's why you got the left right now demanding a Medicare for all floor vote using leverage that they have against Pelosi, and they're not doing it. There's a few incoming Democrats who might actually challenge the system, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fold. Bernie Sanders was leading the charge, but he was too weak to stand up to the machine. Trump led the charge of the populists on the right and pushed everybody around, took over, and then told everyone to shut up. But you know it. The Republicans were happy to see him go. Now, here's what I want to point out. In the polls, we can see the likes of, say, Emerson, Emerson says Perdue is up 2 points and Loeffler is up 2 points. Fantastic. Emerson was wrong. Okay. They had Biden up by 0.5%. By 5%. Okay. Maybe that wasn't completely wrong at the end of everything, but state by state, most of these polls were actually off by 4 to 7%. I'll pull back on that one. Maybe Emerson was a random choice and that wasn't the right choice. The point is, we can see across the board there was a major swing for Biden nationally, but we actually saw at the state level many of the polls were absolutely incorrect. Right now, we can say, yeah, Joe Biden did win, as we see now. I know a lot of people don't believe it, and there are some questions, but I'll tell you right now. At the state level, we were looking at some historic failures. I mean, across the board. What you got to understand right now about these polls right here. First of all, I think it's fair to say general election nationals probably, these are top battlegrounds. Yeah, this was off. Joe Biden won by, I think, 42,000 votes across a handful of states. If you look at Michigan, there's a few. If you look at the top battlegrounds where if you look at several key battlegrounds where if Trump won, then he would have won the election. It's like 42,000. The same is true for Trump, though, in 2016. He won by like 77,000 votes. So it's not spectacular necessarily, but the polls have been wrong. They were wrong in 2016, they were wrong in 2018, and they were wrong in 2020. And they always tend to favor Democrats in a variety of ways. So I think my assessment is, based on what we're seeing from the polls, the GOP is set to win. I'm not saying they're going to win. And as I mentioned already, I know there's going to be people who are the Democrats are going to win and they're going to be like, Tim was wrong again. It's like, dude, if you're going to take my tepid half answers as like a definitive prediction, y'all are crazy. Okay. I'm like notoriously the fence sitter for a reason. I can give you a few thoughts. A lot of people don't like it. They want me to come out and say they'll win, bang the gavel and say it's done. I've done a few things, but here's what I'm saying. Here's some reasons why they probably will win. And that's what people tend to think. But Frank Luntz makes a good point, and there's a good possibility Trump does not win. I'm sorry. The Republicans don't win because Trump is not on the ticket. I think it's a very, very important point. But let me tell you, while we can look at the polls and I can point them out, I'm going to show you the true power of Donald Trump's base. Tuesday, December 22nd scorecard. CNN and Chris Cuomo are number one in the demo. Chris Cuomo? What? Are you kidding me? Look at this. Cuomo got 569,000 viewers on his show. I get more than that. Wow. Chris Cuomo, number one on CNN. Bye-bye, CNN. Tucker Carlson got 435,000. That's crazy, dudes. I get more than that. I'm just some YouTuber in his room complaining on the internet about his feelings. Wow, thank you to everybody who watches. No, seriously, this is crazy stuff. You look at Rachel Maddow, she got 495,000 in the key demo. Key demo means 25 to 54. That's most of the people who watch me. And I get a lot more than that. It's just a lot more than that, which is really remarkable. Not to be fair. To be fair, all right, I can brag about myself. But when you look at Tucker Carlson across the board, he gets 3.14 million. All right. Well, the older crowd is watching. They're outside the key demo. They're older than 54. And they definitely crush me when you include people over 54, probably because younger people are more likely to watch YouTube. Maybe by the time we're all in our 50s, I'll be getting numbers like this on YouTube. Hopefully more than that, because it'd be kind of bad if I spend 20 years doing this and I can't break a couple million. I reduced the amount of viewership, the amount of segments I do every day, but I was getting about, I think I was getting like I think I was getting like 3 million per day. Yeah, I think it was like 3 million because I broke like 120 million views in 1 month. A bunch of leftists were freaking out, claiming my viewership was too high and I was a threat or whatever. But the point I'm bringing up, why I'm mentioning this, Tucker Carlson is now losing to Rachel Maddow in total viewership. Now, they're still both beating Cuomo, but Cuomo's beating them in the key demo. That's crazy. Even Anderson Cooper is beating Carlson. CNN is beating Fox News. That's the power of the Trump base. When the Trump base said, get Trump's back or we're out, they were gone. And now we're seeing CNN and MSNBC are beating Fox News. That's amazing. So you want to play games? I'll tell you this. Do you think these people are now going to turn out for Loeffler and Perdue? It's a good reason to suggest they're not going to win. just because the polls are saying it doesn't mean those people will actually turn out to vote. So we'll see. But let me tell you what's happening in the Trump-based world. I want to show you some tweets from Lin Wood. Now, I got to say, I think these tweets from Lin Wood have gone so far off the rails. I don't even know what to say. Like this dude he's driving his truck and he's just gone way off the deep end. He's saying like, there's a lot of tweets to go through. Okay, he's just putting up a lot of theories and thoughts and ideas, that I just don't agree with. He says, my good friend GA Governor Brian Kemp and his cohort in crime do not want to hear from me. Would someone be so kind to provide Brian and Brad with this truth? The point is, he's got a lot of tweets that are saying, certain people are going to get arrested, that, Trump should invoke the Insurrection Act. But he's getting thousands, 8,600 retweets, 5,700 retweets, 20,000 likes on these posts because people believe him. He mentions John Roberts, Chief John Roberts, selling stock, and being on certain flight logs, if you know what I mean. Accusing Roberts of being like deep state and all that stuff. It's out there. It is. And maybe he's right. Maybe it's all true. Like I said, I don't know what's normal anymore. Normalcy is out the window these past several years. But I certainly think it's certainly off the rails. Will Chamberlain tweets, how is everyone falling for this crap? We have a tweet from Code Monkey Z, who I've actually cited some of the things he said. He says, we all know that Mike Pence has complete authority to save the republic on January 6th. If he takes decisive action as a leader on January 6th, then VP Pence will surely be the 2024 presidential frontrunner and will have huge support to keep America great in 2024. Will is a prominent Trump supporting lawyer, has been getting a lot of flack from the more staunch Trump supporter faction because he's pointing out, like, how are people falling for this stuff? Whatever your opinion is on the hardcore Trump supporting right, the Sidney Powell supporters, the Linwood supporters, you can criticize them and insult them, but they're prominent, they're powerful, and people believe them. I certainly think it's just, look, my opinion on Sidney Powell and Linwood has been clear for some time, and Trump supporters have been mad at me about it because I said I think they're hurting Trump's chances at actually getting a legitimate victory because they're delegitimizing his appearance. Coming out with this, these statements about arresting people, coming out with the conspiracies, including Hugo Chavez. Another case, I believe, was just dismissed. Linwood filed a suit about Dominion. The Kraken lawsuits, all were just knocked out. Now, I understand a lot of these were for procedural reasons, but a lot of these are just unprovable speculation and theory. How is a court supposed to rule on these things? And so I'll tell you this. Sure, maybe you've got the evidence. Maybe you're right. I'm not saying that. I've not seen it. I'd like to see it. I have seen evidence of fraud. Bill Barr said there was fraud. I'd like to see that, litigated in a court of law to make a legitimate determination. We're not there. And I don't know if we'll ever get there because the courts are knocking Trump suits out on procedural reasons. But I'm talking about the Dominion stuff. I've not seen evidence. None. And I've even read a bunch of these old WikiLeaks things, and I've looked into this. I just don't see it. Now, here's what happens. You got regular people, man. Regular people who want Trump to win, who want the economy to reopen. Republicans aren't fighting for them. All right. But then they hear these crazy stories. And I tell you, sometimes the crazy stories are the true stories. You take a look at the history of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. You can now look up on Wikipedia and they're like, it is now believed that the U.S. faked the whole thing to force us into war in Vietnam. Sometimes the crazy stories turn out to be true. All right. But when you go to a regular person and they just get CNN and Fox News, and look, Tucker Carlson still gets 3 million people. You can see the Trump supporters who left, but Tucker still gets about 3.2 million people. You go to these people and you say things, and people like Will Chamberlain are going to say, how are you falling for this crap? Now, that's not to say anybody's right or wrong. Certainly, I believe extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which I've yet to see in terms of the Dominion stuff and so these bigger, grandiose deep state conspiracy theories. But if you want regular people to support the president and call for his victory, call for him to, say, invoke the Insurrection Act, or for Mike Pence to take some action on the 6th, you've got to convince them of a legitimate and reasonable approach. All right? You might think you're right. But if you go to them and say, Hugo Chavez and his cohorts created this system back in 2013, Hugo's now long since dead, but the system persists, they're going to be like, dude, what? I got no idea what you're talking about. You come up with the more reasonable stories and bits of evidence, things like from Matt Brainerd of the Voter Integrity Project, where I've actually corroborated his evidence. And then I can say, like, OK, this needs to go in court for sure. Definitely needs to be in court. Unfortunately, I think they've actually barred Brainerd from testifying in some instances, which is crazy. That's the legitimate approach, in my opinion. Linwood and Sidney Powell coming out with these crazier stories, I think, will hurt Trump in the long run. You may want to believe it. You may even have evidence and you believe it to be true and you've seen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying regular people, you've gone so far that you can't bridge that gap. You need to approach people on something that sounds reasonable. Hey, did you hear about that guy who's got a database of double voters? That's crazy, right? That's potential evidence. Shouldn't that be in court? Well, I even talk to some liberals and they say, yeah, of course, get it in court. You got that USPS guy who blew the whistle to Project Veritas. I said, get him under oath. And I got criticized by far leftists. How stupid is that? What if the dude was lying? Get him under oath. Was that so hard? That's reasonable, though. You go to a regular person, say a USPS postal worker blew the whistle. Shouldn't we get him in court testifying under oath? I think a reasonable person is going to say, yes. Yes, absolutely. And that's where you start. Unfortunately, we're in a time where, well, it's too early, it's too late, or there's no injury, which is crazy. And that's why I think a lot of Trump supporters are turning to the crazier stories. Because if you're not going to get your day in court, and there is no system by which you refute some of these claims, then people have no reason to ignore them and believe them to be false. If the system rejects the voice of the people, refuses to hear it, then they'll just keep going. And this is the problem I brought up a long time ago. This is what I said. We need this stuff to go to court. We need these claims, these bits of evidence to be in court on the merits. You know why? If you don't, people will say, why do I care about you? You don't listen to me anyway. And when people feel like they have no voice, they'll go and find it somewhere else. The courts need to hear what the states and the people have to say. Rejecting the Texas lawsuit was a mistake. The Supreme Court should have taken it up and ruled on the merits. And they may have well just said, look, we've ruled on this. We've seen the merits and we disagree. Texas, sorry, bye-bye. But they didn't. They didn't actually go through the merits of the case. They just said, no standing, have a nice day. Texas has no right to talk about the other states' elections. I think that was a mistake. I think it was a big mistake. I mean, I guess you can argue that it would open the door for other suits in the future or whatever, but taking the case is not that big a deal in my opinion, especially when you had, I think it was Thomas and Alito, Supreme Court justices, who believed that original jurisdiction, there's an obligation for the Supreme Court to take up any suit between states citing original jurisdiction. Doesn't mean they'll actually rule in their favor. But think about it this way. Whether or not there's an argument about the law and like legal standing, the appropriate response would have been for the Supreme Court, we're listening to you. We've heard your complaints. We've seen the reports. We're going to go through them in court. And if we can't prove them, we're going to throw it out. But what happened? They just said, shut your mouth and get out. Well, people are going to say, if I don't get a chance to speak up, if you don't even listen to me, then why would I bother with you? I think Trump supporters can accept going to court, fighting their case, and then having their case thrown out. I do. Not all of them, but a lot of them, enough of them. But when you take all of these people and you just tell them to get out, they will. Take a look at Fox News, for instance. So I'll tell you this. If I ignore all of that, this is what I'll leave you with. The Republicans need to control the Senate. Otherwise, Democrats take everything and probably pack the courts. If the Republicans lose, that's what we will get. And I think a lot of regular Republican voters will vote for the Republicans. I think the polls were all wrong. It's going to skew in favor of the Republicans. And my personal normalcy bias is they're going to win. But I do think there's fair arguments as to why they're not. So I'll put it this way. A lot of people like to say, Tim Pool will often say, here's what I think will happen, but hey, so could this. Yes, because I don't have a strong prediction for you. The left likes to pretend that I always make these grandiose predictions that don't come true, and that's never been the case. It's like you can't have, I love it. People can joke that I'm the milquetoast fence sitter. That doesn't give a definitive answer, but then they can take anything out of context to claim I'm making actual predictions. I would lean towards, if I was going to give a probability, 60% Republicans win this one. Even though in the past I said I think they'll lose. I think the Democrats are going to win. I look at these polls, I look at what they're saying, and I think, no, if the polls are this close and the polls were, particularly wrong across the board in different, battleground states, I think they'll win. There's good reasons to believe they won't. And if I had to put down money, I probably, or I'll put it this way, I would not bet on this because I just don't know. but I lean towards Republicans are probably going to win. That's where I'm at right now, and I could be wrong. Here's what I'll just leave with you. Listen to what I had to say, take my opinion, tell me I'm wrong, comment, and then based on what I'm showing you, you can give me your opinion on what you think is actually going to happen, and then on January 5th, we'll find out. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up tonight, youtube.com/TimcastIRL live at 8 p.m. as we always do, Monday through Friday. Make sure you check it out. If you haven't already, go to youtube.com/TimcastIRL and subscribe. And I will see you tonight live at 8 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you then.